George Soros.
When Soros pays...
How is that? I mean, this is a huge topic in every state. Everybody knows it's happening.
She had a 96% non-prosecution rate.
I couldn't believe what I saw.
So at some point, people stopped calling the cops.
We had a good conversation at breakfast about George Soros and all of his funding for DAs. How is that? I mean, this is a huge topic in every state. Everybody knows it's happening. I don't know how he's funding everybody but what's his goal? What's going on here? I know you have fought against this and have fired several DAs.
The Soros-backed prosecutor in the city of St. Louis who was unlawfully refusing to do her job and was destroying the criminal justice system in the state of Missouri and did unmitigated and immeasurable harm to the city of St. Louis, Eastern Missouri, and the state and region as a whole. I think that when Soros pays to elect prosecutors who abuse prosecutorial discretion, it is an illegal nullification of the law. In other words, since the time of the founding, prosecutors are provided discretion to determine, based on evidence, what charges should be filed, whether a charge should be filed, what charge should be filed, and ultimately what the disposition in the case should be. So you get a police report, you read the police report, you decide what statute, what law was broken, and then you decide, okay, is this a prison thing, or is this like a probation and treatment thing, or is this somewhere in between? And those are the decisions. That's sound exercising of prosecutorial discretion. But what the Soros and his organization, what they're promoting is an abuse of prosecutorial discretion. So instead of making individualized decisions based on evidence and police reports, those Soros-backed prosecutors are saying, we're not going to enforce wide swaths of the criminal code, of criminal law. For instance, I'm not going to prosecute people for offenses, property offenses, where there's not a human victim that was physically harmed. Well, now hold on a minute. You can break into my house and steal all my stuff, but if you don't hurt me in the process, you're not going to charge that offense? And let's see how that played out in the city of St. Louis. This woman was in office from 2016 until 2023. Jeez. She had a 96% non-prosecution rate, 96% of reported crimes. So at some point, people stop calling the cops because they know nothing's going to happen. And at some point, the cops stop authoring police reports and sending them to the prosecutor if they're not going to get prosecuted. So I think that 96% non-prosecution rate probably underestimates how little she was actually doing. Of the 4% of cases she was actually charging and getting into court, 35% of those were then subsequently dismissed by the court because she couldn't be bothered to show up to trial.
Can you talk about, I mean, I used to live in St. Louis. We talked about this, and I mean, I went there a couple years ago to meet with our mutual friend, Andy Frizella. I couldn't believe what I saw. I mean, it was like a totally different city. Yeah. Every part of it, downtown, the outskirts, all of it. It's gone downhill.
It's really sad.
It's really gone downhill. And you gave an explanation of how crime, because of the Soros-funded attorney, it kind of started in St. Louis proper, moved out to the counties, moved out to the to the outer counties. And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean,
like how that affected that city.
Yeah,
it's not just St. Louis.
Yeah,
this is happening all over the country.
Yeah, and we're all worse off for it. And I feel terrible for our men and women in law enforcement who are putting their lives on the line every day to try to keep our streets safe and are not getting the support they need from the Soros-backed progressive prosecutors. But St. Louis is an interesting example because what we learned is that crime doesn't care about jurisdictional lines. It's a regional problem. Crime doesn't care that there's 114 counties plus the city of St. Louis, Missouri. Crime doesn't care that there's 46 different judicial circuits in the state of Missouri. The homicidal murderers that had basically overtaken the city of St. Louis because the prosecutor wouldn't do anything about them, then drove out the petty criminals to the county and to the collar counties. So we were seeing in Warren County dopers who were stealing wheels and tires off of cars And they were doing it in Warren County because they didn't want to get shot doing it in St. Louis City. They didn't want to live around the homicidal murderers either. And when you drive away all the people, when crime depopulates an area, there's less people to rob. Those robbers are going to go somewhere else. Those thieves are going to go somewhere else. So it was absolutely a regional problem. And that one woman was completely, the Soros-backed prosecutor was completely undermining the criminal justice system for the entire state of Missouri. I took office on January 3rd, 2023. And in less than 45 days in office, I filed the lawsuit that ultimately got rid of her. The legal term, it's a Latin term, it's called the writ of quo warranto. And it is a lawsuit intended to demonstrate that the person is unlawfully holding office. And my argument was, she's not doing her job. She's unlawfully refusing to do her job. And that alone is a basis for removal. That had never been tested in the courts. So again, it was a first of its kind in the nation, bold, transformative action, but it worked. She filed, the Soros-backed prosecutor filed a motion to dismiss my case, saying this claim is not actionable, is not cognizable under the quo warranto statute. And the judge said, no, if the attorney general can prove what he's saying, that you're not prosecuting cases, that you're not notifying victims, that you're not moving your cases along, that you're not filing new charges, those are enough to remove you. When he denied her motion to dismiss, that's now the imprimatur of law on those claims, and it has a ripple in the pond effect because it gives us precedent to use the quo warranto if ever another Soros-backed prosecutor were to appear in Missouri.
Is that the only one? Are there more?
That's the only one we know of, and certainly that is the worst case example I've seen. I know that other states have similar examples, but typically they're in blue states that you see that. Different states have different mechanisms to remove a bad prosecutor. Like, for instance, in Florida, I know Governor DeSantis has removed Soros-backed prosecutors under his legal authority under their state laws. But in Missouri, it's the attorney general that has the authority to file the writ of quo warranto.
I mean, the way you describe it sounds like a blast radius of criminals.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, so it sounds like, because every state's different, they couldn't take your module and apply it to their specific state.
Well, I think what they could absolutely do is take our definition of what is and isn't prosecutorial discretion and use that as a basis to remove a Soros-backed prosecutor who was refusing to do their job. I think they could absolutely take that and say, well, in Missouri too, let me say this. In Missouri, victims have constitutional and statutory rights. And when a prosecutor is denying those victims of crime their rights, that is also an actionable way to remove a Soros-backed prosecutor. So again, the blueprint, it's not an exact technical diagram that they can replicate, but at least some concepts that could be used in other states.
Man, that really devastated that city.
Destroyed it.
I mean, how do you think they'll, I mean, how long is it going to take to get it back to what it was?
Under her time in office, more than 500 businesses left downtown St. Louis.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.